morning, and I appreciate the invitation, Josh. Nice to meet you, and it's good to see some friends, and it's good to be in Chatham County. You know, when you look at Chatham County, it's one of the top 2 or 3 counties, 1 or 2 counties getting economic development projects in the state right now for everything that Michael just talked about. So congratulations, that doesn't happen by accident, right? It's a very intentional strategy. It's what Josh talked about. It's what Michael and his experience have been talking about. You get here because you work hard, you have a plan, you do the small tasks, and then the opportunity comes. So I'm Gary Salamido with the North Carolina Chamber. A little bit about me, because Josh, thank you for reminding me. Sometimes I forget to talk a little bit about you know, who's the guy up here that's talking to you. And why is he here? Well, I'm here just because I'm lucky. I got to North Carolina as quick as I could from upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region in New York. I'm actually a pharmacist. I went to pharmacy school, practiced pharmacy for a little while, and realized I didn't know when I got out of pharmacy school, I didn't know how money worked. I didn't know how economic development worked. I didn't know how communities were built. So I went back to Texas, went to the University of Texas, went to graduate school there, got a health, finance, and economics degree, and then went right into the policy and advocacy work. What brought me here was Glaxo back in 1992, when it was still Glaxo, before it was GlaxoSmithKline. And I was there 19 years. I spent 19 years lobbying in every state in the country, or had contracted lobbyists, and learned a lot. Back in 2001, they had a leadership change in the government affairs unit, and I became the lobbyist for corporate Glaxo. So I went from just advocating for medicines to beginning to understand the impact of tax policy and workers' compensation policy and economic development policy, regulatory policy. Did that for 10 years or so, and then in 2011, in my line of work, in advocacy work, you rarely get a chance to build something up from the ground up. You're usually inheriting different types of advocacy programs. Well, the North Carolina Chamber had been around in its current form for about 8 years at that point. And I was asked to come and build that advocacy organization, that policy advocacy organization, to help North Carolina and help the North Carolina business community put into words what was in the minds of business leaders all across our state. Is we have an incredible place to live and grow and raise a family here. We were good at some stuff, we weren't good at other stuff. And so we had to take and look in the mirror, and we had to say, okay, we're good here, but we're not good here, and then we had to develop a plan on how to get there, an intentional plan that helps people have a good job. At the end of the day, it's about people, and Josh, you laid it out really well. And there are small businesses, there are big businesses, but they're just not soulless entities. They're filled with people like you all in the room that are making up those businesses, and it's all about people. And so when you listen to our leaders and you listen to the business community and the folks in your community, it's always about people. It's always about how do people make a difference. If you ask them, they'll tell you. And how do you create jobs? Well, people will tell you what they need. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what our winning formula is. It's not going to be a mystery to anybody here in this room. Talk a little bit about what the operational environment, which we find ourselves in now, and then what we're doing about it. At the end, I'm going to share something with you and that Josh was talking about, particular to small businesses that hasn't been available in North Carolina for over 30 years. It's a way to help small businesses get health care for themselves and their families and their employees. So with that, and then I'll leave some time for questions at the end of the day, because that's where I learn. We have about 70 local chambers of commerce across the state that are members of our federation. And every week we're talking to those folks, because at the end of the day, I learned a long time ago, I get the privilege of aggregating voices of business communities, 22 different industry segments, businesses of all sizes. But the best advocate, the best lobbyist is a constituent. It's you. It's you back home. We have to learn what's important to you, and then we have to aggregate that, and then when folks come back from the General Assembly or from the regulatory agencies, where we do most of our work, it's you that makes the difference back on the ground. So what's all that mean? Vision and mission. Real simple for us. The vision is we want to have the best state to grow private sector jobs. If you have a job, you can help build your community. People build communities through a good job. And the private sector is where the resources come to help put in the infrastructure, to help invest in the schools, help invest in the water and the sewer. You need good private sector jobs to do that. So our vision is that we're the best in the country to do that. We're close. We're still really, really good. You know, I always say soccer analogy. I played soccer, and my son's a soccer coach out in South Dakota. The worst lead in soccer is 2-0, right? Because you're winning, but the other team gets a goal and they get momentum. Right now, we're up 2-0 in the country, right? Do we have the courage, and do we have the fortitude, and do we have the vision to make that final investment to go 3-0? You go 3-0, you're going to win a long time. And then the other part is a legacy, right? A legacy isn't about winning a championship. A legacy is about doing it over and over again because of culture, and because you have the right people, and because you change your game when you're on top of your game, not when you're on the bottom of your game, right? And that's how you stay on top. So that's what number one is, and the mission is we do it really 4 ways: research, develop, communicate, and advocate for policies at the state level. We don't do much federally in the agencies, and initiatives, which I'll talk about a couple of those, that help make sure we stay in the top spot. We listen to people and we build from the ground up. So, quick overview. I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is how we do it based on what our members have told us to do. We're 100% member-driven, 100% privately funded. We don't get any resources from the government. It's all businesses from, again, 20 different industry segments. People you would know, common folks you would know, folks you wouldn't know, that support us. Our chamber is the hub. Our foundation, which we'll talk about, is a C3. That was formed in 2012, and that's really the basis of why our intentional vision is helping North Carolina, along with you and others, become the best state in the country for a good private sector job. Back in 2012, I just joined the chamber, and our leadership team, our executive team, got together, 4 or 5 different CEOs. We went down to Pinehurst. We had a few other folks come in, and they were trying to develop the 5-year strategic plan for the operations of the NC Chamber. What's that 5-year plan? We got about a third of the way into the discussion, and one of the fellows that was leading at the time, our chairman, bank president's name you would know, said, "Who's got the plan for North Carolina's economic security? Where's that plan for North Carolinians' economic security?" And no one could answer the question. It was maybe a little piece in here. There was a DOT study, or there was something that was done in commerce, or RTI had done something, and there were segments and pieces of it, but there was no overall plan for the economic security of North Carolinians. And then he asked a second question, which we use today as a guiding principle and under motivation. He looked around the table and he says, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? If the business community doesn't come up with what that plan for economic security is, who's going to do it? Businesses transcend political cycles, they transcend time. They're here before our policymakers, and they're here after. So it has to be the business community that does that. If not us, then who? The NC Chamber Foundation was founded, and a Vision 2030 was developed, and it's on our website to this date, and that drives all of the activity of our advocacy. It's a long-range plan, it's based on data, it's not based on any partisan feeling, it's just, what's the problem, what's the data say, and then what are the policies that we need to change in order to make sure we continue to move forward so people can have a good job. 3 pillars: education and talent. It's all about people. We can get all of the climate right, our business climate right, we can get the infrastructure right, but we gotta have people here, and we gotta have a place that people wanna come to. And that means that education and workforce systems have to be aligned and relevant and agile. So number 1 is people. Competitive business climate's the middle one. That's all the stuff that goes into the cost of a job: tax, tort, civil liability, workers' compensation, healthcare, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then infrastructure, all that infrastructure: transportation, road, rail, sports, water, sewer, right now energy, right? It's all part of that. And you know what? Not one is a priority of the other. It has to be together. You have to have a plan where those work together. So the Chamber Foundation drives all of that. Out of that came our other entities. Out of that says, okay, you're gonna have to have a legal institute, because eventually your policies and your activities are gonna be challenged in the courts, and we're finding it now. Our legal institute has never been more challenged than it is right now, because people that disagree in the public policy arena, if they find out they can't make progress there, what happens? You go to the courts. And then we're not represented in the courts, right? It's just 2 folks. The people are not in the courts. So the legal institute is to protect what we have and to also handle those really difficult issues. Data privacy, AI. There's no rules for the road for some of that stuff. So the courts are making the rules right now. through different things. So we have to be an advocate there. And we do have a political program. For us, our political program is not funded with dues dollars. It's separate companies that want to support that. And all we do is look at what our vision is, what Vision 2030 says, what our annual advocacy priorities and strategies are. And for the North Carolina General Assembly is where we do most of our work. We just say, how do you vote on those things every year? There's no partisan designation. We do everybody alphabetically. And we say, here's our agenda. We communicate with them, give them the reasons. And when they vote with us, they're a jobs champion. And when they're not, they're not. And then we have a conversation. We don't go negative. We don't do any of the things that, unfortunately, our political environment has evolved into, right? The blame, shame, and destroy that doesn't make progress happen. What makes progress happen is good database policies, good reasonable debate and discussion, and then holding people accountable to that at the end. So that's how we make it work. It's research and development, foundation, it's advocacy, the chamber and the courts, and it's the political program that supports the people that make courageous decisions and help recruit those that want to engage. So the operating environment that we're all in, and none of this is going to surprise you. Here's a slide that talks about North Carolina's winning formula, and both Josh and Michael talked about it, touched on it, and this is throughout the whole state of New Hampshire. So we had an economic development summit in DC a month and a half ago or so, where Senators Tillis and Budd and the entire congressional delegation, very bipartisan, got together with the business community and talked about what we're facing nationally, what we're facing locally, but why North Carolina is winning. And this gentleman from the American Enterprise Institute summarized it really well. We have this, and no other state has it. And this could be here, this can be in Kannapolis, it could be in Charlotte, it can be out west. When you look at what we have and what we have in proximity, our ability to not only take advantage of innovation, but we are the innovators. The accessibility and the proximity of having our military, having our commercial, manufacturing, and tech sectors, and research universities that are world-class in proximity, that's one of the key reasons we're winning. And what's that about? That's about people. It's about intellectual capacity. It's about curiosity. It's about determination. It's about thinking of the next thing that's going to make lives better for people. North Carolina is winning because we do this better than any place else in the country. And we continue to do that. We have to protect it. Is Texas close? Yeah, Texas is close, but Texas is huge, right? We're big, but the proximity of those mines, so I'm a science guy, so molecules, if they don't connect, there's no energy, right? They gotta collide. North Carolina, this region where you sit, there's a lot of collisions going on. And that's where a lot of ideas happen, and that's where a lot of innovation comes from. So what are some of the headwinds? Well, those same institutions where those collisions occur in those businesses, we're at the lowest trust index that we've been in a long, long time, according to Galin. There's no trust. The way our society and the lack of cohesiveness that our society has right now, and you could talk about the different things that have influenced that, there's no trust in institutions at all, right? 28%, yeah, but that's nothing. That's our colleges and universities, that's our big businesses, that's our government, that's our media. There's very little trust in institutions. Here's a second slide from Gallup. And what I'd like to point out here is the difference between small business and big business. Both make up people. People make them both up. But small businesses, good level of trust. Big business, not much trust. Then you look at everything along there. You got Congress, television, news, way at the bottom, newspapers. That used to be the way we could trust those sources. Now we get media wherever we want to get it, and it tends to favor how we think. And so we don't communicate as well as we have. So when trust in those institutions is as low as it is, and we have the lack of social cohesion that we have right now through all these different influences, and we get a blame, shame, and destroy culture, that's a heck of an operating environment for people that are trying to create jobs in their communities and build communities, right? Because we just don't know. Talk about uncertainty. That kind of uncertainty is really difficult. Businesses, small businesses. Small businesses are people, big businesses are people, but big businesses have not done a good job of talking about what's important to them and why business is accountable. You know, businesses are the most accountable to their employees and to their consumers, right? At the end of the day, all businesses are accountable to those folks, but they've lost their way. We've lost our way in how we communicate and how we talk about it. We've talked about it in words of economy, and we talked about it in GDPs, and it's people at the end of the day. So we have to restore the confidence of the people by showing them we're listening to them, demonstrating to them that we're taking care of them, we have good policies in place, and when consumers say a product's bad, it's bad. And it hurts, and the markets will work. So Edelman does this every year. Another one will be coming out shortly about what's happening in trust and what's happening in the shifts of trust. And so you can see along the timeline the different things. 2024 was innovation in peril. What's our key competitive advantage in North Carolina? That we have proximity of people that are colliding in brains and innovating beyond what anybody else is innovating at a speed and a rate and a pace on which everybody else is innovating. And it's in peril because of the trust in institutions, because of our lack of social cohesion that we have right now. So we have to protect it. So we got to do that better. First, look in the mirror, and then what are we doing together to make it better? Last operating environment piece, conflicts to watch in 2024. Conflict, always difficult, right? Creates a lot of uncertainty. People get hurt in conflict. Well, we're an active military state. When the White House calls 911, it goes to Fort Bragg. Literally. Our folks out there are on standby all the time. They're the ones that are protecting us here and abroad. Demographic change. We talked about it, both Josh and Michael talked about it. So I'm 63 years old. I'm at the end of the baby boomers. A couple things. We're not retiring like we should and passing leadership on, getting out of the way for our young people. We need to do that. We need to be better at that. But also the folks behind us, 25 years behind us, the birth rate is less than half of what it was when I was born. It's just math. We got a rate and pace of innovation that we have never seen. We have access to information like we've never had. AI is developing. All this stuff is happening with it, and it's creating opportunity. The problem is there's not enough people to take advantage of the opportunity. They're good. Kids are smart, but there's not enough of them, right? And the last piece is, and we can have a whole discussion about cultural change. My youngest daughter is 24. She's never not known a smartphone. So we have a set of parents that have never not known a smartphone. You know what happened when the smartphone and social media happened? Well, a couple things is 24/7 news, 24/7 information. What did that do to parenting? It scared the crap out of us, right? And we changed our parenting styles, and we sheltered our kids a little bit so they're not near as resilient because it's not their fault. And they can get information like that. So where does the value of experience and the value of mentoring and the value of having a little bit of patience in the work, so you can get some scars, right? Scars matter. Well, we have a bunch of young, smart, incredibly courageous people who believe they can do anything, who will switch jobs and do all that stuff, unlike what I would do. But we have this environment right now that is really uncertain. They don't lack the cohesion, and they're kind of scared, right? So we have a lot of catalysts right now in an operational environment, globally, nationally. I would argue less in North Carolina. We have our problems, but we're doing it a little bit better. But it's a really difficult operating environment to be in. And our past chairman, Ward and I with Martin Marietta, I won't read this to you, but I'll give you a second to look at it, kind of summed it all up in a way. We got so many social and cultural things to navigate right now. We've never seen anything like it. And yesterday's playbook is passé. So how are we going to do that? Well, what worked before was valuing relationships over differences, was believing in people who can build their communities, listening to them, and listening and having the relationship be more important than whatever difference we have. So I was fortunate at Glaxo to work for a fellow a man that he's passed away. You might know the name here. Robert Ingram came here from Illinois. He was a son of a single mom who owned a general store. Long story short, he ended up being president and CEO of one of the largest pharmaceutical companies at the time. But he never, ever sacrificed a relationship. I met him when I was a pharmacy student in Albany, New York, in I think it was 1983. And he hired me back at Glaxo in 1992. He put me down lower in the organization, obviously. And he taught me that the relationships matter, and how you get good advocacy matters. And he was known for sitting with Ted Kennedy at breakfast and Orrin Hatch at dinner, and they both were able to get the job done. So, is the playbook passé? Yeah, perhaps, but I would posit that we have to find a way to get back to it, right? We have to find a way to put relationships ahead of our differences, ahead of our thirst for immediate gratification in our news, and rebuild that if we're going to build the communities, because everything else is so uncertain and so out of our control, but how we treat people is not at the end of the day. So, poised for opportunity. So our political climate intersects our policy climate in North Carolina and everywhere else. And these are just a summary of some of the issues that we have, and they range, right? So to forever chemicals, childcare, housing. Well, right now, the two things that we're seeing that are the biggest impediments or the biggest opportunities for us to continue to retain, attract workforce here: affordability and availability of childcare, what's that look like, and housing across the spectrum. So how do we make sure that we manage our land appropriately, that we come together and make sure people have housing and availability of childcare? We have populations of parents now that either out of their choice or their necessity both have to work, right? Or choose to work or want to work. But it's different in a rural area that's economically challenged in North Carolina than it is in this area about who can afford it, what the availability looks like, how do we keep the kids safe at the same time, make sure that they have the opportunities to read in those particular places. We have a model that is not affordable. So how do we modernize, how do we keep the kids safe, how do we make affordability and accessibility to childcare, whichever the parent chooses, more available? It's a big challenge for the workforce right now. And then housing. A lot of people can't live in the communities where they work. And that's our doctors, it's some doctors, it's lawyers, some lawyers, but it's mostly firefighters, policemen, nurses, teachers, and our service workers in those small businesses that are serving that community. And we've got to figure a way so folks like that have an opportunity to live in their communities again. And that's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard because communities are developing, but we have to get comfortable with discussions about different types of housing, right? It's housing across the entire economic spectrum. It's not just, we don't even use terms affordable or low income housing anymore because it's housing for everybody. It's how do we do that? Those are the two difficult ones. We'll talk about healthcare later. So where we intersect here, and I think the purpose of this slide too is not only highlight those, but to talk a little bit candidly about our political discourse right now. There's fringes, right, on both sides. There's activists and populists on both sides. And they're not the ones that are talking about what the majority of North Carolinians feel and want and think what the solutions are. That's not what's happening. They're controlling the noise. And the business community, and we have some good conversations about this, the business community, for all the right reasons for a while, has ceded that place at the table. Right? Because when blame, shame, and destroy happens, companies just want to protect their people and they want to serve their customers. They don't want any part of that blame, shame, and destroy that comes from the extremes of our political discourse right now. So we're in a really interesting, challenging operational environment. We've got a political environment that's difficult. So how do we stay on top? Right? We keep doing what Michael does every day and what you all do every day here is you look for opportunities to create good jobs for people. If you create jobs for people, the discourse dissipates locally because you're doing it together. People are building communities together. That's what we need to do to stay on top. Growth. Don't look back and say, yeah, we're good. We're not going to challenge. We're not going to deal with the difficult issues, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And a fiscal lift. So we're talking about a fiscal cliff in North Carolina right now. Yeah, it's real. Yeah, is our growth going to level off a little bit and our revenue's going to level? Sure they are. But does that mean that we have to just cut and not make the critical investments in education that we need to make? Does that mean that we shouldn't invest in energy? Does it mean we shouldn't invest in our transportation infrastructure? No, it means the opposite. It means we have to take the opportunity when you're on top to change your game and stay on top. So our foundation, I talked about these three pillars, education and talent, competitive business climate, infrastructure and growth. I'll give you a couple of priorities in education and talent supply are landing using data to align demand with our education, talent, and workforce systems and what they're prioritizing. Community colleges, we have second to none. The Propel NC initiative about looking for high in-demand jobs and aligning the education and talent with is critically important. We're in a project in healthcare right now with North Carolina AHEC that is aligning. We increased the output of nurses over the last year about 8% with it by looking at communities, looking at the data, and then bringing together the different education and workforce systems to say, okay, what does that need to look like from the high school to the community college to the university to the workforce systems, and how do we get people into those jobs? We're going to do that for manufacturing next. It's coming, and we're also looking at it for agriculture. Our foundation just completed NC Ag Leads, which is the first strategic plan across all of the different ag segments about what is it going to take for us to continue to lead in agriculture. It's our state's #1 industry. $110 billion a year in agriculture. Competitive business climate, all the stuff that goes into a job there, the biggest challenge there is healthcare. And what are we going to do about healthcare, the affordability, predictability of healthcare? We have the best healthcare in the world. People come from all over the world, particularly this region, but also in the Charlotte region and others, for the healthcare. But to most folks, it's not affordable or accessible, particularly small businesses. So we got to address that. We're going to talk about that. And then the last one, infrastructure and growth. Right now we're engaging in 2 studies, water and wastewater. North Carolina is very blessed. We have good water here. But how are we storing it? How are we treating it? Are we making sure that it's going to be available for the future and for the future growth? So we're doing a study to talk about accessibility. And the other one's energy. What is the energy vision for North Carolina? We have an all of the above energy vision right now, but we got to get to nuclear energy. And we've got to get there as quickly as anybody else. And what does that look like? And how do we get there? And you know what? The consumers of energy, both personal consumers and businesses, and the energy industry don't always agree on how to get there, right? We got to have a good discussions. We got to protect our air and we got to protect our water. We got to do that, but we got to do it in a thoughtful way to make sure that we can still power our hospitals and our factories and have reliability. And the only way to do that is nuclear. With it, it's a lot safer than it was in 1981 when 3 Mile Island had its problem. It's a lot different than it was then. But we haven't built a reactor in this country since then because we've been scared of it. And we got to figure that out. Small cell nuclear is coming. Also, we maybe we want to be the first ones. That's super expensive, but we want to be a close #2. And we got the power companies here to do it. The last piece in the energy piece is that we're seeing conversations happen now that we haven't seen before. So we had in our board meeting, we have both Nucor and Duke Energy on our board, and they're usually banging heads over energy, right? They got together, and the Nucor folks says, you know what we have? We have a lot of land where our foundries are. But we're taking our power from 40 miles away right now. And why is there not a small cell nuclear reactor that's just serving Nucor and saving the other generation for the rest of the grid to help keep costs down? So that we're going to see some public-private partnerships. Microsoft already is doing something on 3 Mile Island up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So we're going to see some different things happen to help try and accelerate nuclear generation, particularly small cell. So business playbook, we got together with 12 other different vertical business associations, say, okay, what are the 5 things that we can all agree on that are going to help keep us where we are and continue us to move? And we touched on these. We put them into a 1-pager for folks. And protect our legal climate, a fair and balanced, predictable legal climate, both for defendants and for plaintiffs is important. But it has to be clear, fair, and productive. One thing we have here, not a lot of states have, we have a business court for complex business cases that allows those to be dealt with expert judges. It's really been helpful in protecting our legal climate. It's balanced right now, so we have to protect that. Maintain our right to work status. You all know this, it's critically important. It doesn't mean that unions are not allowed. It just means people should have a choice whether they join them or not, and your job should not be contingent upon them. And it's the only ranking we like being 50th in 50th in unionization. Keep taxes low and fair. You notice I didn't say 0. So low and fair, competitive. We need to support things that only government can do, so they need to be low and fair. Workforce development we talked about, and infrastructure with a focus on energy and water. But also our ports, the North Carolina ports are super competitive, have some of the quickest turns We have to continue to access those and allow those folks down at the ports to get ships in and out, and also to get them into the middle of the state. When you come into Wilmington, I think you're less than 90 miles from four metropolitan areas. We have the quickest turns and the quickest access to those population centers. And we saw during COVID, that really elevated. So Helene, and storms down east, but Helene's the latest one. This is from David Jackson of the Boone Chamber. We have to make sure that Helene is just not a moment in time. It's not a moment in time for those folks out there. It's not a moment in time for a third of the economy of our state out in the western part of it. And they're making progress. And David and the folks in Asheville and those folks wanted me to say one message, that no matter what the road signs say, North Carolina is open. We haven't taken the signs down that said it closed yet on I-40. We're working on that with DOT, but it's open. And the best thing we can do to help them recover is to show up, go into their small businesses, spend time out there. So if you have a chance, please do that. They're going to rebuild. There's some resilient folks up there. But I mean, it's going to take three annual DOT budgets in order to repair the roads and repair the infrastructure up there. Water and sewer just wasn't damaged, it's gone. It's down in the Gulf of Mexico, literally. The entire things. The river's bed is different. It had changed, the river's bed is different. So but they're doing it, they're open, they're good. Please go back. Last thing, small business health insurance plan. So for over 30 years now, this product has not been available in the marketplace in North Carolina for small businesses. Different individual professions have been able to aggregate lives and then go to an insurer and say, okay, I've got 3,000, 5,000 lives of attorneys, doctors, engineers, bankers, but you weren't able to do that across industry segments with it. So we worked this year in December, and opportunity favors a prepared mind. We've been working on it for over 14 years. But two things happened. Helene happened, and we had to make sure that we could find a way to have small businesses have health insurance going forward, because folks out there had so little, and Blue Cross Blue Shield lost 700,000 lives with the state employee health plan, which they had for 40 years. So they need lives to go in there. A good insurance company needs as many lives as it can for the laws of insurance, and we need small business to have an option. Right now, for 2 to 50 employees, there's very few options available to those folks. And they don't qualify for expanded Medicaid most of the time. The exchange is way too expensive for them to get on. So they're either not buying anything, or they're just buying the bare minimum, or they're just giving their employees a little bit here, or trying to do an HSA, whatever it is, they're trying, but they don't have any options. Beginning in January, they're gonna have an option. If they're a member of the Siler City Chamber of Commerce, they have the ability to then have access to this health plan through the North Carolina Chamber. So we established a MIWA, we passed a law, and we did it in a way that's going to be highly regulated so that we protect the people that are in it and the businesses that are there. So we went to DOI, we went to the House and the Senate, and we went to Blue Cross, and we wrote the language together so that we protect the people, so that you can't get thrown out every year, that it's not going to be just taking off and skimming off healthy lives. We needed that regulation in place to protect people and protect the businesses that are employing those people. And it's not going to be community rated. It's going to be rated by each individual entity that signs up. So your own experience will determine what your premiums are for it. But we're going to aggregate the lives, and we're going to act like an ERISA plan, like a large company plan. So we'll get leverage, and it's going to have dental and vision. So think about an employer that has 10 to 15,000 covered lives with family and how they can self-insure. Well, we don't have to put the money up to self-insure. Blue Cross is going to insure it, but we get the advantage of the leverage of the lives that are there. So we'll get really competitive. We're anticipating anywhere from 25 to 35% reduction of premiums than what you would have right now. And it could even be better than that, because the pent-up demand here, we're anticipating we could anywhere from 10 to 15,000 lives, in the first year for small businesses, 2 to 50 employees with it. So stay tuned for that. We'll be working with Josh in the Siler City Chamber to help do that. and we're excited about it, mostly because at the end of the day, and here's where I'll close it, because we're going to serve people that don't have a lot of options right now, people that build communities, people that support the larger businesses that are so necessary to building every community in North Carolina, those restaurants, those landscapers, the ones that are out there working hard every day to make our communities beautiful, the construction workers, and others. So with that, thank you for the time today. I'd be happy to, if you had any questions or comments, or if you say, he's crazy, please say that too. I learned from that. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I always learn from you folks, so thank you.